Right, cars. We've gone from rattling death traps that needed a prayer and a push start to computerised missiles that judge your driving skills and measure your carbon footprint. Today we're focusing on the cars that mattered, the cars that changed everything from every decade since automobiles were first made. And let's begin with the very first. 1800s, the first car. Ben's Patent-Motorwagen. Queen Victoria's on the throne, Jack the Ripper hasn't started his hobby yet, and Carl Benz is about to terrify the whole population of Mannheim with what looks like a garden chair. Ladies and gentlemen, the Benz Patent-Motorwagen, the first proper car. If you call something with 3 wheels and a power output a toaster a car, let's talk about that engine. An astonishing 0.75 horsepower. Top speed, a face-melting 10 miles an hour. What would put modern lawnmowers to shame. But back then, this was absurdly mental. It's almost like someone having a fusion-powered hover car pull up outside your house. That's the level of what the actual fuck this machine was. Fast forward to 1926, the Benz and Psy merges with Daimler to create Mercedes-Benz. From a wobbly three-wheeler that scared horses to building some of the most prestigious motors on the planet. Talk about a success story. It's like finding out your weird uncle's garden shed experiment turned into Apple. 1900s, the Ford Model T. Henry Ford was about to freedomise transportation with wheels and a shed for a car. Let's talk about numbers. 20 horsepower. That's about the same as you get in a modern food blender. Top speed, 45 miles an hour. Fast enough to scare anyone within screaming distance. But apart from all that, the genius bit was the mass production that Henry Ford pioneered. The assembly line was so efficient, it dropped the overall price of the Model T from £840 to £260. That's like going from I need to sell a kidney to drop in a few coffees throughout the month. And speaking about it, I hope you do like black as well, because the most passive-aggressive move that Henry Ford made is saying your Model Ts could only come in black. Not because black was stylish, mind you, because it dried quicker on the production line, meaning they could make more Model Ts quicker. It's like choosing your wedding suit based on how quickly it can go through the dry cleaners. By 1927, Henry Ford had churned out 15 million units. It turned cars into rich people's playthings to everyone's problems. It probably invented traffic jams, road rage, and the first ever car dogging. 1910s, the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. Right, let's jump to the 1910s where Rolls-Royce thought aluminium and 4 wheels wasn't enough. They had to perfect every part that touched a car. A car so refined it almost made every other car on the road look like it was built in a shed after a night down a pub. Rolls-Royce built something that moved with grace, and it was almost like a ghost in silk pyjamas. Under the elegant bonnet sat a 7-litre straight-six engine producing 48 horsepower. Not much by today's standards, but remember, this wasn't about speed, this was about making a statement, and that statement was, I've got more money in my back pocket than 4 generations of your family. Almost like every Rolls-Royce today, but the Silver Ghost got its name for its extremely quiet engine characteristics. It glided along like butler's whispers. If you're good with history, you probably know World War I broke out around this time, and the Silver Ghosts were deployed by the British and turned into armoured cars. Talk about multi-use, from carrying aristocrats to hunting them down, this car could do it all. The Silver Ghost created a new standard. Without it, we'd probably have leathered-lined luxury tractors as our premium option. And yes, it's probably why Bond drives an Aston Martin and not a Vauxhall Corsa. 1920s, the Bugatti Type 35. Alright, so let's get into the roaring 20s, where Bugatti thought that winning races wasn't enough. They had to win every one they entered. Enter the Type 35, Ettore Bugatti's middle finger to anyone else out there who thought race cars couldn't be reliable and fast in one package. In an era where race cars were practically death traps, this thing revolutionised everything. The numbers first, a 2-litre straight-8 engine, some variants with a supercharger, producing 90 horsepower and 120 miles an hour. That's hot hatch territory for the 1920s. And just at 750 kilograms, the power to weight ratio was out of this world. This was like bringing a fighter jet to a paper aeroplane contest. The hollow front axle and those integrated brake drums were revolutionary, while other manufacturers were still building cars like Victorian furniture makers. Bugatti was thinking decades ahead. It was so well designed that the gentleman racers could buy one, thrash it round the circuit, drive it home, all in one sitting without needing a team of mechanics and engineers. The race records mental, over 1,800 victories, including 5 consecutive Targa Florio wins. At one point, 14 out of 15 top places were 35s. Showing up in anything else was like bringing a spoon to a gunfight with this car. Sure, it had its quirks. The cable operated drum brakes were like putting a child in a china shop. But when you looked that good and won that much, why would you even care about your brakes? The side stopping was just an optional extra with the 35. You were just that far ahead of anyone else. And over a century later, it's still showing us how it's done. If you'd like to see a full video of the in-depth breakdown of this car, click the link below. 1930s Also Union Grand Prix car. If I was boring, I'd probably choose the Volkswagen Beetle, only because it's very important, but it's almost like watching silver paint dry. Instead, let's give it to the absolutely mental Auto Union cars. Where German engineering met political craze and created something that tried to kill every driver every time it turned the bloody wheel. Picture this, Hitler is writing blank cheques to prove German superiority. And also Union, who eventually turns into Audi, wanted to prove something, so they strapped a V16 demon engine in the 1930s to 4 wheels. 6 litres, 500 horsepower and top speeds of 200 miles an hour on tracks that were practically farm roads. Health and safety, mate, this was the 1930s, seatbelts weren't even invented yet. You was lucky to even have a pair of goggles to protect your eyes. With pre-war technology, the engineering was pure madness. They were revolutionary in putting the engine behind the driver, something that F1 in the 50s only caught on to, and they were doing it in the 30s. This engine layout meant better weight distribution and having a V16 with 500 horsepower, sometimes going through 4 back wheels. You could imagine how fast this thing was, or at least mind-boggling quick for anyone who lived in that era. So while the Beetle was teaching us about sensible transport, the Auto Union changed the game entirely, and it's a shame, well, the war broke out and we didn't see the Auto Union progress any further. 1940s Jeep Willys MB. Well, the war definitely narrows the choice for this list, but it's got to go to the Willys Jeep, a car that just refused to die. Built in just 49 days from scratch, because apparently that's how long you need to build a car that might win you the war. Engineers weren't asked to make it pretty, they were told to make something that would last the apocalypse, and my god, they delivered. Under the bonnet, the Go Devil engine, 2.2 litres of pure American determination, producing a whopping 60 horsepower. Sounds pathetic until you realise the thing weighed about as much as a heavy lunch and had all the aerodynamics properties of a brick fighting another brick. But here's the brilliant bit, it was so light it could practically float. Picture that, you're defending your position in the war and suddenly a Jeep casually drifts past you down the river like it's on a Sunday cruise. After the war, instead of retiring to tell war stories down the pub, Willys Jeep transformed it into the CJ series. 1950s, the 300 SL Gullwing. Let's talk about the 1950s, where Mercedes-Benz thought regular doors were for peasants and engineering limitations were more like a gentle suggestion. The 300 SL Gullwing, whilst Americans were trying to outchrome each other, Mercedes almost made something look from the space race technologically conservative. Under that endless bonnet sat a 3-litre straight 6 engine, the world's first fuel injection system alongside it, 215 horsepower and a top speed of 160 miles an hour. Those were supercar figures, and it's still debated if this was the first supercar. I disagree, I'll get onto that in a moment. But let's talk about those doors, the magnificent, ridiculous and utterly mental Gullwing design. Legend has it, it wasn't just a style choice. The tubular frame of the car was so over-engineered, the doors were a kind of a side fall. The only way they could fit it to these cars was to make them go up instead of sideways, and that amazing eagle design was born from that point forward. It's about as practical as a chocolate teapot, but my god did it make an entrance. Just don't go explaining to your insurance when you park in a garage too small and all of a sudden your door becomes part of the ceiling. Born from the highly successful 194 race car, the Mercedes was a tamed down version of this same DNA. But being from a race car platform, it does have a few quirks, including the cockpit that will get extremely hot. But who cares the way you feel, because you'll be feeling much more hot, at least to the people on the outside when driving this thing. It wasn't the first supercar, but it was a glimpse into engineers having complete freedom without a budget. It made something that wasn't practical, but my god was it brilliant and beautiful. And there you have it, from the very first car in the 1880s to the 1950s. If you've enjoyed this video, the subscribe button is right below. If you're one of the lucky ones to watch this video before part 2, I'm aiming to get this out over the next couple of weeks from this upload. Be sure to check out part 2, where we're going from here all the way to modern times.